The summer of 2011 had been hotter than usual in Bitterroot County. Wildfires crept along the lower ridges of the northern Idaho mountain range, swallowing brush and licking at the edges of forgotten trails. Fire crews from neighboring towns were flown in by chopper, working shifts so long they sometimes forgot what day it was. It was mid-July when Unit 6 from Clearwater Station was sent to contain flare-ups near an old, decommissioned hiking route. Most of the trees there had been dead for years, dried out, hollowed trunks that snapped under pressure. But what they found buried in the soil was not made of wood. A fireman named Cooper stumbled while clearing a collapsed tree. When his boot hit metal, he thought it was just a rusted drum. But after digging for 20 minutes, the crew realized they were uncovering a vehicle. A 1990s model dark green Chevy Blazer. Windows intact, tires deflated, buried shallowly just beneath the forest floor, like someone had hidden it on purpose. Inside the vehicle, old blankets, broken crayons, and a pink plastic bunny missing one ear wedged in the back seat. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, just dust, decay, and silence. Within days, the forest was crawling with rangers, investigators, and news vans. The VIN number matched a vehicle reported missing in August 1993, belonging to a man named Malcolm Penn. The file had sat untouched in a dusty sheriff's archive for nearly 2 decades. Back then, no one had known where the Penn family had gone. Now, people weren't sure if they wanted to know. Harper Ellis had been teaching at Briar Valley Middle School for 7 years when she saw the headline. Vanished family's SUV found buried in Idaho mountains. Mystery reopened after 18 years. She didn't usually read the local news, not anymore. But something about the photo caught her eye. It was an old image, scanned from a 1992 holiday card. A family of 4 standing beside a snow-covered pickup. Smiles wide, posture stiff. The boy in the photo couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. His name, the caption said, was Owen Penn. Harper stared at his face, freckles, wide eyes, a small scar just beneath his chin. She knew that face, not from real life, but from a drawing she'd found years ago, one she'd kept. She dug through her storage chest that night, flipping through an old stack of children's art she'd saved from her early teaching years in Spokane.
And there it was.
A crayon sketch of a mountain, a car, and a figure waving from inside what looked like a cave. In the corner, the name Owen P. She hadn't taught anyone named Owen. The drawing had come anonymously in a donation box during a charity drive in 2000. A mix of winter clothes, canned food, and school supplies. Some of the items had been moldy, but the sketch had been sealed in a plastic sleeve. She'd kept it because something about it had felt sad, like a memory trapped on paper. Now Harper held it with shaking fingers, staring at the image with fresh eyes. Was it even possible? She couldn't sleep. The next morning, she called in sick for the first time in years. The Penn family's case file was thin. Harper accessed it using her old state teaching credentials, pulling the archived documents from a public records terminal at the town library. According to the report, Malcolm Penn, 38, had been a military survival instructor before retiring in 1990. His wife, June, was a local elementary teacher. They had 2 children, Owen, 7, and Tessa, 4. On August 3, 1993, the family was last seen refueling their Chevy Blazer at a gas station in Hart Lane, Idaho, about 12 miles from the base of the Bitterroot Mountains. They told the cashier they were going camping for the weekend. They never came back. A search was conducted the following week. Planes flew overhead. Rangers combed the valleys. Nothing was ever found. The case was quietly closed. No foul play suspected. Just another lost hiker story. Until now. Harper visited the fire station that afternoon, pretending to be a reporter doing a retrospective piece. Most of the crew had already been reassigned, but a young fireman named Ray agreed to speak. "Yeah, I saw it," he said. "We thought it was just junk until we cracked open the driver's side door. Still had the keys in the ignition." He paused. "And the weirdest part," Harper leaned in. "What?" Ray scratched his chin. "The license plate was clean, like someone had wiped it. Not recently, but deliberately. Everything else was buried, but that tag was face up, like it was waiting to be seen." Harper didn't reply, because in her pocket, she still held the crayon drawing. And in her bones, she felt something shift. She hadn't just stumbled onto a cold case. She'd been pulled into it. The drawing haunted Harper all night. She left it on the kitchen table, staring at it from across the room as she drank cold coffee and listened to the wind scratch at her windows. The figure inside the cave wasn't waving. It had its hand pressed against the glass, like it wanted out. She scanned the sketch again under a magnifier lamp she used for grading papers. At the bottom, faintly drawn in pencil beneath the mountain, were two barely visible lines. Not part of the landscape, not part of the child's usual wild scribbles. She traced them with her finger. They looked like doors. Steel doors. The next morning, Harper called in another sick day. She packed a backpack camera, notebook, her old GPS and the drawing. The fire crew had unearthed the Penn's car along an unlisted dirt path north of Heartline, near an area once known as Hollow Ridge. The trail had since been overgrown, marked only by old forest markers faded to near invisibility. It was an hour's drive, followed by another hour on foot. The forest grew thicker the farther she went, branches clawing at her jacket, silence growing heavy. No cell service, no signs of wildlife. When she found the clearing, she stopped. The ground had been disturbed, still soft, scarred by tire tracks and boot prints. Yellow tape fluttered lazily from nearby trees. But the SUV was gone. Hauled away to an evidence yard somewhere, she guessed. All that remained was a shallow depression in the soil and something poking out from a pile of turned-up rocks near the tree line. Harper knelt beside it, a plastic container stained but intact. She pried it open. Inside were several crumpled Polaroids and a torn notebook. She scanned the first photo. It was the Penn's, standing near a wooden structure in the woods. Not a tent, a building, a shed, a shack. The second photo was just trees, blurry, but in the corner, a small girl's face peeked out from what looked like a cellar door. She was smiling, but it didn't look like a happy smile. Harper flipped open the notebook. The writing was rushed, uneven, and written in different inks and hands. The first few pages appeared to be Malcolm's. Day 3. Supplies stable. They're still adjusting. June is restless. Owen asked too many questions. He doesn't understand why this is necessary, but he will. When the time comes, they'll thank me. Another page. Day 15. I told June we'll be safe here when the rest of the world burns. She cried again. I don't think she gets it. The bunker is our salvation, not a prison. I built this for them. Harper turned to the back of the notebook. These entries were different, messy, childlike. Crayon scribbles beside each paragraph. Daddy says we can't go outside yet. He says the air isn't safe, but it smells okay to me. Mommy told me not to cry so loud. Another. Tessa got cold. Daddy wrapped her up, but she didn't wake up. He said she's sleeping for a long time. Harper's hands trembled. She snapped photos of every page. Then she heard it. A twig cracking in the brush behind her. She spun around. No one. She waited. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Nothing moved. The wind didn't even blow. But she felt it. A presence. Someone was watching. She packed up quickly and hiked back to her car without stopping. Every step felt like a countdown. Something inside her whispered that once you dug into the Penn family's truth, something dug back. At home, she laid out the photos, the notes, the drawing. The image of Owen's face peeking through the cellar doors echoed the sketch she'd found years ago. Same features, same mountain. He hadn't drawn a fantasy. He'd drawn a map. She opened an old topo overlay of the Bitterroot trails and matched the sketch's ridges to real geography. There was one area, unmarked on most public maps, but noted in ranger reports from the early 90s as Sector N9, used briefly during a wildfire in 1991. No maintained paths, but there had once been a ranger cabin there. The Penns weren't lost. They'd gone there. She called the Heartline Ranger Station. An old man answered his voice gravelly, like it hadn't been used much in years. When she asked about Sector N9, the line went quiet. Then, that area's closed. Landslide hazard. But was there a cabin? Ma'am, I don't know what you think you're going to find out there, he said. Some places don't want to be found.
The line went dead.
Harper stood still. She had never believed in curses, but some silences felt alive, and the woods were full of them. The next morning, Harper sat in her car at the trailhead near Sector N9, engine off, staring through the windshield as the fog rolled over the peaks. This part of the mountains wasn't just remote, it was forgotten. The rangers had stopped maintaining the roads years ago. The path in was blocked by fallen branches, moss-covered rocks, and signs long faded into unreadable warnings. She stuffed the photos, notebook pages, and Owen's sketch into her pack, triple-checked her GPS, and stepped out into the cold. Each mile into the forest felt like she was peeling back time. The deeper she went, the more unnatural everything felt. The birds didn't sing. The trees didn't sway. The stillness was suffocating. An hour in, the trail ended. But the landscape didn't lie. The sketch had marked a flat outcrop between two ridgelines, just above a fork in the creek bed. Harper climbed slowly, cutting through brush and using her compass like she had during her field study years in college. She almost missed it. Half buried under leaves and rotted pine needles stood a crumbling shack wooden, nearly collapsed, choked by vines. The front door was missing. Inside, dust-covered shelves, broken chairs, and the remains of a small cast-iron stove. It reeked of mildew and iron. She stepped over a rusted cot, found a hatch in the corner, and froze. It was metal, square, bolted tight. On it, carved by hand into the surface, were the initials, MP. She knelt, heart pounding, and scraped at the edges. The lock had rusted through. With one firm tug, the hatch creaked open. A smell rolled out, stale, earthy, and thick with something long decayed. Harper aimed her flashlight into the dark and climbed down. The steps were narrow, old, carved into rock. They descended 20, maybe 30 feet. The air grew colder. At the bottom, the space widened into what looked like a makeshift underground bunker. Concrete walls, old battery-powered lamps, shelves lined with empty cans, a moldy mattress, children's shoes in the corner. She moved slowly, careful not to make noise. The flashlight caught something on the wall. Tally marks. Dozens. Hundreds. Etched into the cement by a small hand. Near the far end of the bunker was a table with a cassette recorder and a stack of dusty tapes, each labeled by date. The latest one, April 1998. 5 years after they vanished. Then a voice fragile, breaking. It was June. This is day. I don't know. Maybe 1,000. Tessa's gone. Owen doesn't talk anymore. He just draws. I asked Malcolm to let us go. He said the world isn't ready, that we're the only ones left who understand. But it's a lie. I know it now. There is no war. There never was. A click, silence. Then another recording started on the same tape. This one was a man's voice. I changed, they were weak. June gave up. Tessa couldn't adapt. Owen. He's different. He sees what I see. I had to bury the car. The others wouldn't understand. But they will. Someday they'll see why I had to do it. Harper slammed the stop button. Her hand was shaking. She stepped back, the flashlight swinging. It caught something in the corner. A small drawing taped to the wall. It had survived the damp and time somehow. A picture of a boy standing at the bottom of a well, looking up. The sky above him was filled with dark clouds and red eyes. He wasn't smiling. Behind her, a board creaked.
She froze.
Then slowly turned her flashlight toward the stairs.
No one was there.
But the hatch was closed. From the outside. She ran to it, climbing the narrow stairs 2 at a time. She shoved against the metal. It didn't budge. She shoved again, harder.
Still nothing.
Then a scratching sound on the hatch above her. Fingernails.
No words.
Just soft, deliberate scratching. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just pressed her back against the cold wall and whispered to herself, "It's not Owen. It can't be Owen." Because whatever was out there wasn't trying to get in. It was making sure she couldn't get out. Harper sat in the dark, her flashlight flickering as the battery waned. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. The scratching had stopped, but she didn't dare move. The silence pressed against her like a hand over her mouth. Finally, when the beam was nothing but a dim glow, she pushed herself up and scanned the bunker again. There had to be another way out. The bunker wasn't just a survival shelter, it was a prison. But it had also been designed by Malcolm Penn, a man obsessed with control and contingency. He would have made a second exit. He had to. She moved to the back wall and examined the surface. Cracks, discoloration, an uneven seam running from floor to ceiling. She pressed her fingers against it. It shifted. A false panel. Behind it, a narrow tunnel carved into raw dirt, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. No lights, no supports, just darkness stretching endlessly forward. She didn't think.
She crawled.
The space closed in around her, dry soil brushing her arms, dust filling her nose. Every few feet she paused to listen, half expecting to hear something behind her, half hoping to hear nothing at all. After what felt like forever, the tunnel widened into a small chamber. She collapsed onto her side, coughing, and then she saw them. Drawings. Hundreds of them. Taped, pinned, scratched into the rock itself. Children's drawings. A boy, a girl, a woman, a tall man with no face. The sun blacked out. A car being buried. A figure standing alone in the trees. A door sealed shut. And always, always, a pair of eyes in the sky. Harper moved toward the largest drawing. A tall figure looming over a table. On the table, food. Around the table, stick-figure children, some crossed out in red. She turned. In the corner was a cot, covered in blankets. Something stirred.
She froze.
The blankets moved again, slowly, deliberately. And then a voice, low and hoarse, broke the silence. "You're not him." Harper's heart nearly stopped. The blankets fell away. A man sat up, bare-chested, dirty, hair down past his shoulders, skin pale from years underground, eyes wild but aware. He was in his mid-20s, and on his wrist still tied after all this time was a child's friendship bracelet made of faded plastic beads. It spelled out, Owen. Harper couldn't breathe. She stepped forward. "Owen?" He flinched, then nodded. She took another step. "I'm Harper. I'm here to help you. Do you know how long you've been here?" Owen looked past her to the tunnel. He said not to talk to anyone, not until the sky opens again. Harper felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Owen, your father, he's gone. He's been gone for a long time." Owen shook his head. "No, he's still here. He said the mountain would keep him safe, said he'd watch from the trees." "Owen!" He stood unsteady on his feet. "You shouldn't have come. Now it won't let you leave either." Harper's voice trembled. "What won't?" He looked at her with hollow eyes. The thing he gave it, the thing he became. She backed away. From the tunnel entrance, a sound echoed. Not footsteps. Something heavier. Something dragging. Owen reached under the cot and pulled out a dull hunting knife. He held it out not to threaten her, but like an offering. "You'll need it," he whispered. "It follows noise." The dragging grew louder. Harper snatched the knife and turned toward the tunnel, her mind spinning. She had come for answers. She had found the one person no one thought could be alive. And now she had to get them both out. She crawled back into the tunnel, heart racing. Behind her, Owen followed silent, like he'd been trained to. As they reached the exit hatch, the dragging sound turned into something worse. A low, wet rasp. Breathing. Then,
A voice.
low, ragged, familiar. "Owen!" Harper shoved the hatch open. It wasn't locked anymore. They climbed into the shack and burst into the open air, gasping. It was almost dusk, but the forest wasn't still anymore. The wind moved. The trees swayed, and somewhere far behind them, something screamed. Not an animal, not a man. Something that had once been both. They ran, and the mountain watched. They didn't stop running until the stars came out. Harper's legs burned, lungs raw from the cold air. Owen kept pace behind her, unnervingly quiet, as though he'd been running from things like this his entire life. When they finally reached the trailhead where her car was parked, Harper looked back one last time. Nothing. Just the dark outline of trees and the faint rustle of wind. Owen didn't look back at all. They drove in silence for over an hour before he finally spoke. "He made us listen to the recordings every night," Owen said. "His voice, his rules. He said if we ever tried to leave, the mountain would keep us. It would become part of us." Harper tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "Where's your sister?" she asked quietly. "She got sick. Mom tried to hide her symptoms, but he found out. He said sickness was weakness. That weakness would poison the whole plan." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The silence that followed said enough. Harper dropped him off at the small urgent care clinic in Maple Pines, a town 30 miles from the ridge. She told the night nurse he was a missing person, possibly traumatized, malnourished. She gave no name, just left an envelope with photos and copies of the notebook pages. Then she drove back to her apartment alone, windows down, letting the cold air blast against her face like punishment. By morning, Owen had disappeared from the clinic. No one saw him leave. No one knew his name. The files she'd submitted were gone. She tried to speak to the sheriff's office. They said no such missing person had been admitted. When she returned to the trailhead 2 days later, it had been bulldozed. Fresh earth covered the path. Signs posted, "Private land, no trespassing." When she contacted the Forest Service, they claimed there had never been a cabin in Sector N9. That region had been closed since 1985. She mailed her files to 2 investigative journalists and never heard back. One was found drowned in a river, the other left the state. The news cycle moved on. The Penn family returned to being a rumor. Harper returned to her classroom. For a while, things were quiet. But some nights, when the wind howled just right, She swore she could hear scratching again. Not at the door, but inside her head. She began drawing in her sleep, waking to images of caves, sealed doors, and figures with no faces watching from the trees. One morning she found her bedroom window open, though she lived on the third floor. And on the windowsill, a small plastic bead bracelet, red, blue, yellow. It spelled out TESA. A trail camera hidden deep in the northern woods near Bitterroot Range picked up motion. It was a cool autumn night. A solitary figure stepped into view, barefoot,
Thin.
eyes too wide for the face. He wore a shirt that hadn't fit him since he was a boy. It was torn, bloody. In his left hand, he held a small plastic bunny. The right hand dragged something behind him, a bag or maybe a body. He turned to face the camera just before the frame cut out and smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. Back in town, no one reported anyone missing. No one asked questions, and the mountain slept. But not deeply, never deeply, because what had been buried wasn't just a car. It was a family's descent into madness, a father's delusion, and something else, something that still lived in the woods,
Watching.
waiting and remembering.